Hi everybody, welcome back to the Retro Ghetto, and as the thumbnail would suggest, we're going to be looking at the most expensive video games that I currently have in my collection, but it's not going to be quite that straightforward. I thought it won't be much of a surprise to anybody if I just list 10 of what would probably be Super Nintendo games. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight 11 of the systems that I currently collect for. I'm going to look at the most expensive game that I own for each, and I'm going to contrast and compare that against the most expensive game for that console currently listed at CEX. If for any reason you haven't seen last week's video, I'd go and take a look at that first, because that's where we basically looked at the 10 most expensive games that are currently listed on the CEX database. And using the same rules here, I'll only be looking at games, no collector's editions, and we're only going to be concentrating on PAL versions of games as well. However, the reason I wanted to do this is obviously 2 or 3 consoles dominated that top 10 list, and this week we're going to have a lot more variety as we look over 11 very different consoles. Okay, so we're going to be kicking off the list looking at PlayStation consoles and starting with PlayStation 2. The most expensive game I own, thankfully, is one of my favourite games on the system at £45, and that is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. This is actually the 4th release in the MVC franchise, originally a 2000 arcade release with the PS2 version later being released in 2002. And at £45, this was significantly less than I spent for the standee that I've got displayed over there. Contrastingly, and unsurprising I'm sure to many, the most expensive PlayStation 2 game currently listed on the CEX database is Rule of Rose. This survival horror game will set you back £520. And next up we're going to PlayStation 3, and again continuing my run of one of my favourite games being my most expensive, we have the God of War Collection Volume 2. This collection contains both the PSP entries in the franchise, and I believe both great games, my favourite of which being Ghost of Sparta, and once again I have the standee taking pride of place within my room. And this game, like many on this list, I did advise once upon a time that you guys should pick up when it was about £35. It's now going for £60 and showing no signs of slowing down. And the most expensive of the PlayStation 3 games currently listed is one that I'm going to need to put my teeth in to pronunciate correctly, and one I'm going to try not to look at my notes for. Hyperdimension Neptunia Hyper Collection? Nailed it. Coming in at approximately £5 per consonant. I shouldn't be laughing at my own joke. This 2010 JRPG will cost you £110, and it's joint for the #1 spot, with a game that also holds the #1 spot over on the PlayStation 4, which we're going to be looking at now. PlayStation 4 is a difficult one for me to put up much of a fight for financially, because I tend to only collect PlayStation 4 with special editions, big boxes, steelbooks, that kind of thing. And as I say, we're largely omitting special collections from this list. The most expensive game that I currently own on the PlayStation 4 as a standard edition is the Batman Arkham Collection, coming in at a meagre £18, but definitely one I'd pick up if you see it for £18. The most expensive PS4 game that CEX currently have listed is £145, and as I've already said, £110 on the PlayStation 3, and that is Godzilla. This 2014 Natsume Atari developed game rocketed in price due to a low print run and removal from digital stores, and that has led to its monstrous price. Moving on to Xbox 360, and this is the one from my collection which shocked me of all of these games. The most expensive Xbox 360 game that I currently own in my collection is Need for Speed Most Wanted. Yes, Need for Speed Most Wanted is now a £38 game, and let me tell you, it's as fun as it's ever been. And from the sublime to the ridiculous, the most expensive game currently listed for the Xbox 360 is My Horse and Me 2, coming in at £85. I'll nay be paying that. I'm sorry, I apologise for that one. Moving on to one of my favourite consoles to collect for, the Sega Mega Drive, and I've actually got 2 games joint for the #1 spot, both clocking in at £95, and that is Shinobi 3 and Hyperstone Heist. Whilst these games aren't cheap, they're both very good games, and I'm actually surprised they're both under the £100 threshold still. Now looking at the mega expensive, we're going to be looking at Fatal Fury 2. This was an Australian release, and a mint copy of this game will set you back £750. But if you want to concentrate on UK PAL releases, then you're going to be looking at The Punisher. The Punisher will currently set you back £550 for a mint copy. It's a game that I would actually love to play, and to my knowledge, I don't think there was ever an arcade perfect port to a console. If I'm wrong, which I hope I am, let me know in the comments. And now it's Nintendo time, and I'm hoping I can finally start to close that gap between the prices of what I own and the most expensive currently listed on the CEX database. I'm looking at you, Super Nintendo. I'm going to be kicking this list off with Nintendo Wii. A console I don't think gets the plaudits it deserves for the fantastic games in its library, and the 2 most expensive games that I own are both fantastic games, and they are Muramasa the Demon Blade and Sin and Punishment. Both of these games will set you back just £32 each, and I think they're well worth picking up for £32. The most expensive Wii game listed is Legend of Sayuki, and CEX actually marked this one as being with a manual, which is good of them for saying it's £101. Admittedly, I'd never heard of this one, and outside of Europe this is known more commonly as Heavenly Guardian, and it's giving me real Pocky and Rocky vibes. This 2007 scrolling shooter developed by Starfish SD, and it looks good. It looks very good. So next time you're watching these videos, it's not just you that it costs money. I might end up being £100 lighter after this one. And from Nintendo Wii, we of course have to move on to Nintendo Wii U, a console which I haven't spoken about much recently on the channel. The most expensive game currently listed on the CEX database is Finding Teddy 2. This game is currently listed at an ever-increasing £220. Of course, with me owning a full set, my most expensive game that I own is also Finding Teddy 2. I actually bought this brand new for £35, and one of my biggest collective regrets is not picking up multiple copies of this one. With there being just 3,000 numbered games ever made in this print run, there's no telling where this game's going to end up in terms of pricing. Next up, we're going to be looking at Game Boy, a collection which I'm really enjoying growing at the moment, and one that I hope to add a few more titles to this year. Unsurprisingly, the most expensive Game Boy game that I currently own comes from the crazy world of Pokemon prices, and that is Pokemon Red. This game has evolved, see what I did there, to £110. And I think at one point it was actually higher than that. Most expensive Game Boy game is Trip World at £1,100, but that's one that we covered on last week's video. Okay, from the Boy to the Cube, and my most expensive GameCube game is Paper Mario: A Thousand Year Door. This is a game that constantly fluctuates in price, and it's currently sitting at £115 with CEX. And honestly, I'm actually tempted to sell my copy. There's not many games, OG Pokemon games aside, where I enjoy turn-based combat, and as much as I've tried and wanted to enjoy this one, I just can't get into it. And whilst yes, I am an avid collector, having a game of this value sitting on my shelf that I don't enjoy playing just seems like a waste. And driving into the #1 spot on the GameCube's most expensive list is Gadget Racers at £480. Okay, let's switch it up a bit and look at everybody's favourite modern hybrid handheld console. The most expensive game that I own for this system that's currently listed with CEX is Lonely Mountains Downhill. I'm not sure if this is actually the most expensive game I own because there's so many limited run style releases on the Nintendo Switch that CEX don't have them all on their database. Surprisingly though, this super rare release is currently listed on their database at £65. I actually saw a copy of this in the Victoria Centre branch, complete with the sleeve, so if you are interested in picking one up, there's a nice copy for you there. And I've actually put a lot of time into this one. It's a very fun game and I highly recommend it. Currently the highest listed Nintendo Switch game on the database is one which sounds like a late night Channel 5 movie from back in the day, Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time. Another super rare games release, this is a frantic 1 to 4 player couch co-op action space shooter. And finally, to nobody's surprise, I had to leave the Super Nintendo until last. This is the system by far that I've got the most heavy hitters for, and the most expensive game currently that I own in my whole collection is Super Hagane. This game is currently listed at £350 for a standard copy or £450 for a mint copy, but in reality, there's no mint copies ever going to go into CEX and it'll cost you probably more than twice that on eBay. Not only is this an expensive game, but one that is in equal measure both good and difficult, and one that I am determined to one day complete. This 1994 Hudson Soft action platformer is notoriously rare, with rumours that it was only available through certain Blockbuster stores. You battle through a futuristic samurai setting as a ninja cyborg. A futuristic samurai setting as a ninja cyborg with one of the best soundtracks you will ever hear on a 16-bit system. What else can I say? This is a game which, regardless of how, just find a way to play it. Again, as we highlighted last week, the most expensive game currently listed for the Super Nintendo is Mega Man X2, of which a mint copy will set you back £1,100. One of few very expensive games is actually in stock at CEX. You can pick up a standard copy of this for £800, although it's definitely seen better days. However, if you did watch last week's vlog, I'm tempted to go down to the store and see if I can pick this one up as an unbox price. Hey, you never know. And there we have it. I think my takeaway from this list is that collecting video games in 2023 can be as expensive or affordable as you want it to be. I think most would agree that the most expensive games on some of these systems aren't necessarily the first games that you'd choose to play. However, if you are fortunate enough to own some of these expensive games, more power to you. As an avid collector myself, not every purchase I make is easily justifiable to a non-collector. Ultimately, do you and collect what makes you happy. Play your games if you want, keep it retro. I'm off to make some irresponsible life choices on the CEX app in a bit.
Thanks everybody for getting me back on the outro.
That's that, good boy.
Retro Ghetto.
That's